Welcome everybody to this evening's webinar. This evening we're here for the Water Crisis is the Climate Crisis event, a very important discussion. My name is Susan Breen and I'm from the Shale Must Fall Coalition. So in March 22nd this year, activists from Shale Must Fall and EXOR joined forces, and we had a day of global action to highlight the greenwashing exercise of which is World Water Day. So here on your screen you can see some of the actions that took place across the world. It was an amazing success and everybody's very proud of what happened on the day. So this evening we're here to discuss the grim realities of the water crisis, which involves fracking, mining, changing weather patterns and privatization and all the different risk factors that are affecting people and ecosystems around the world. We're also going to delve into the hypocrisy and neocolonialism of multinationals who present a green facade to their customers in the global north while wreaking havoc on both human communities and the ecosystem in the global south. So we have some amazing speakers with us this evening, and I'm very proud to be here with them. Just a note for anybody who wants to put in a question. We have some limited time for questions during the event. So if you want to put up a question, just put it into the comments, but go to the EXOR Global page, because this is being streamed on a number of different platforms. So if you go to the EXOR Global page and leave your comment there, hopefully we'll be able to put it to one of our amazing speakers. So with that, we'll move on to our amazing speakers. And the first speaker we have is Esteban Servat, who is the founder of Ecological. Esteban is an Argentinian activist who is living currently in Europe. He's going to speak to us about fracking, mining operations in Argentina, the impact on water contamination and scarcity, and the role of multinationals and the plunder of the resources of the global south and the impacts that they are having there. So Esteban, over to you if you're happy to speak to us now.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Can you hear me?
Yep, loud and clear.
Thank you, Sue, and it's an honor to be here with all my fellow fighters from the Global South, and thanks to Extinction Rebellion for organizing this webinar. My name is Esteban Servat. I am from Argentina. I am a scientist. I was building a self-sustainable community in my country. I was not an activist until fracking came to our region, which happened to be the second largest shale gas basin in the world and the fourth largest shale oil basin in the world, known as Vaca Muerta. It's about the size of Belgium. And it has been shown that exploiting this basin with fracking is set to consume over 15% of the entire global carbon budget that humanity has left to comply with the 1.5 degree target of the Paris Agreement. I think it's very important that we can be here in this webinar today, because I think the people of the global north especially need to hear the stories that we have to share, because the global north is playing a major part in the destruction not only of the global south, but of themselves, because 15% of the global carbon budget is no joke. It's not a matter of Argentina or a matter of the global south, but a global issue that is basically rendering the Paris Agreement useless. So how is it possible that the very companies, the biggest companies that are fracking my country, are from Europe and from the rest of the global north, but especially from Europe that is championing the Paris Agreement, yet Shell from the Netherlands, BP from England, Total from France, Wintershall from Germany, Equinor from Norway are among the leading companies fracking Argentina, irreversibly contaminating trillions of liters of water, which is what all of this fight is about for the locals, contaminating water that is already very scarce and causing endless kinds of diseases, including child leukemia. In some towns where the fracking towers are working, child leukemia rates are 3 times higher than the national average. All of this blood is in the hands of the global north, is in the hands of European companies, which are not only the EU governments doing nothing to stop them, but they're actually subsidizing them and promoting their activities. And I'm sure the story I'm telling you here will not be much different from what our fellow fighters have to say of their own countries. But that's why it's so important that the audience of the global north can hear this and take action. And it's not just about denouncing this, but about the fact that we have the power to stop it. So in my case, we found a secret document from the government and we leaked it, which was revealing contamination of the water tables by the first fracking towers in Mendoza province. And this led to a huge resistance movement building up with tens of thousands of people on the streets. The government persecuted us. In my case, I accumulated the higher number of criminal cases than anyone else in Argentina for fighting fracking. I had death threats against me and my family, which eventually led me to come to Germany. But from here, we are coming together with all the climate movement and from many different countries to stop the consuming end of this exploitation. Because as I said, the governments of Europe are not only not stopping them, they are subsidizing them and financing the consumption of the products. This frack gas comes to Europe in the form of LNG. And Europe is funding billions of euros of public money to build a lot of LNG terminals throughout the continent to import this gas, which has been shown to be the worst fossil fuel of all, 40 to 60% higher emissions than even coal. And fracking in its own merit has been shown by a groundbreaking study a couple of years ago to be responsible for more than half of all of the increased methane emissions globally over the past 10 years coming from fossil fuels, or more than 1/3 of the increase when you take into account all sources, including biogenic ones. So methane is 87 times worse than CO2 in its global warming potential over a 20-year period, which is something that the institutions don't talk about. And there's just no future. There's no Paris Agreement. There is no 1.5 degree possible if fracking keeps going. And as I said, water is the main issue that people are defending in the global south. Either it's fracking or mining or most of these technologies that they're fighting, which are coming from companies, multinationals from the global north. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Esteban. Truly shocking stuff. Thank you so much for that and for all the work that you do and you continue to do with Shale Must Fall and all your other organising. And thank you so much. So our next speaker is a pre-recorded video link from Janella Tan, who's international spokesperson for youth advocates for climate action in the Philippines. Mitzi is an amazing young activist, and she's going to speak with us about the interconnected issues of climate and water crises and what's fueling this in her country. So we have Mitzi here now.
Hey everyone, I'm Mitzi Jonel Tan, a climate justice activist based in Manila, Philippines, one of the most vulnerable countries in the world to the climate crisis. I first became an activist in 2017 when I was able to talk to an indigenous leader of our land, and he told us about how they were being displaced, killed, harassed, and militarized, all for protecting our planet and protecting their ancestral domain and the forests from large-scale mining operations and mega dams. This is why I became an activist, and I really decided to go into collective action to join the struggle of those who have been fighting for so much longer than we have. I now organize with Youth Advocates for Climate Action Philippines, which is the Fridays for Future of the Philippines, and with Fridays for Future International. My country is one of the most vulnerable countries to the climate crisis. We have so much rainwater pouring down on us because of climate change, so we have massive typhoons almost every year. Yet come dry season, come drought season, we're still experiencing a water crisis, and that doesn't make sense because we have so much rains during the rainy season, and then come dry season, we should be able to use these water that's been accumulated for the people, but because we have a privatized water system, it is negatively impacting the water access here in the Philippines because privatization limits access because profit is placed over the provision of basic necessities to the people. In early 2019, we experienced a huge water crisis in the capital city in Metro Manila. That was exacerbated by climate change. So it is already extremely hot. Our existing dams were, despite having a heavy rain season the season before, our dams were losing water fast. And then since the systems are inefficient and privatized and not there for the people but for profit, when these resources were being allocated, they weren't being allocated equally, they weren't being distributed fairly. And now the government is actually using this water crisis excuse as a justification for mega dam projects that are destroying forests and displacing indigenous peoples. But that's not how it should be. And why is the government doing this? Because global north countries are trying to invest into the mega dam projects here. And so we're seeing that the same countries that are causing the climate crisis, the global north, are also the same countries pushing our government and pushing our country to have to resort to mega dams that will destroy our forests, which will also exacerbate the climate crisis because it destroys our forests, one of the best carbon sequesters in the world. And then we also see how the water privatization, it was implemented as a law in the 1990s, and it is neoliberal in nature. It privatizes a public good, and this is something that happens because of the global north's, specifically the US here in the Philippines, influence on our country. We're seeing how it's so different in nature. Like, people, I have friends from the global north, and they're like, and when we were preparing for a huge typhoon here, they said, Mitzi, turn on the tap and fill up your everything with water so that you have drinking water. It's like, our tap water isn't drinkable. We have to pay for our drinkable water. We have to pay for our tap water. And this is the thing that people don't understand. Our policies are like this because it's a way to keep us dependent on the global north. And that's why we have to make sure that when we approach the water crisis, it is tied in with the climate crisis. It is tied in with the capitalist and colonial crisis that we're experiencing today. In the end, all of this, all of the hardships that people in the Philippines and people in the global south are experiencing are because of the imperialist crisis that we're experiencing, which is exacerbating the climate crisis, exacerbating the water crisis, exacerbating all this social injustice, systemic injustice that we're experiencing.
And thank you so much to Mitzi for providing us with all that information. She's an incredible young activist and a real inspiration, I'm sure, to loads of young people in her area and around the world. So our next speaker is Olivier Camberet Kavukira. I'm so sorry, Olivier, if I've pronounced your name terribly. Olivier is a scientist and an activist from the Democratic Republic of Congo, and he is going to speak to us about the human rights violations caused by the climate crisis and the role of the global north in the crisis in the DRC. So Olivier, if you can speak now, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the floor. I'm very happy to be given this opportunity to talk again about climate crisis and water crisis around the world, specifically in my country, Democratic Republic of the Congo. First of all, it is important to say that the country I am from is a rich country in terms of natural resources, in terms of water resources, and other natural complex that go with. In contrast, we have one of the poorest population of the world, and many places in the country don't have drinking water, and the ones who have water, it is not safe water for their health. What is a contrast? It is important to say that in Congo, the impact of climate change and water crisis is occurring qualitatively and quantitatively. So when it comes to quantitative expression of water crisis, is that water scarcity in Democratic Republic of the Congo is mainly due to the fact that there is no public policies in such a way. As a result, villages and cities are out of water for months and years, and this is not seriously taken into account by the central government, what causes tremendous consequences in terms of health consequences, security consequences, as well as economical and socio-economical impacts on the communities. Here, I remember something that always happened in big cities of the Democratic Republic of the Congo because of water scarcity. There are women and children that are violated sexually. They are having sexual abuse at night because they are traveling kilometers and kilometers to get at least some liters of water. What is really worse in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, as you may know, it has at a given moment, at a given time, it has been even called the world capital of sexual abuse. So the lack of water is one of the sources of exposure of women to sexual abuse at night when they are traveling to look for water in most cities, including the capital city, Kinshasa. When it comes to qualitative expression of this water crisis in Democratic Republic of the Congo, almost the entire community, the entire population in Democratic Republic of the Congo does have access to safe water. As a result, we are one of the countries with the highest prevalence in terms of waterborne diseases, diarrheal diseases, as well as antimicrobial resistance. I remember we have conducted recently a study in Monkole. Monkole Hospital is one of the hospitals in Kinshasa, where we found a high level of antimicrobial resistance in urinary tract infections. And we are trying to study to see how we can investigate in the link between those antimicrobial resistance in urinary tract infections and water. Again, that may be, as many of them were women, maybe they may have been using unsafe water for their intimate hygiene, what is really worse. And the other problem is that even when you try to talk about this issue of lack of water in Democratic Republic of the Congo, there is nobody to listen to you, because it is one of the secondary problems. It is not taken as being an emergency, as being a priority for the government. So as the time is about to end, I'll talk about the role of the global North in this. Is that we have companies in Democratic Republic of the Congo. You know, it is a country with a lot of minerals. So mining companies in many provinces are involved in pollution, and we also see that we have pollution from households as well. So we think that the global North is involved in the pollution in many provinces of Democratic Republic of the Congo, with mining companies as well as forestry companies, with deforestation that is increasing the impact of climate change. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olivier. Really hard stuff. Thank you so much for telling us about all of that. Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Emilio Enriquez from Mexico. Emilio is an activist with Shale Must Fall and Exor Mexico. And he is going to speak to us about the reality of water shortages in northern Mexico and the devastating impact that water trade deals have had on their area. So over to you, Emilio.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Very happy to be here and tell you about what's going on here in Mexico. I'm also a scientist, and I'm very honored to be here with all of you activists from all over the world, and that we're sharing all our problems, which at the end are a common problem, and that's the human problem, basically. First, I want to say that the situation here, it's basically we're living in a perfect storm. It's a complex, multidimensional problem with lots of contradictions, which when I talk about contradictions, you will probably in your own areas will understand what I mean in a second. First, I want to say that the region from here in the north of Mexico, I'm here in Chihuahua, is called, and all the way from here to California in the US, all this big region has been shown by scientists that we're living in one of the, well, the second most severe drought in the last 1,200 years. And it has been shown now that this is due to climate change, at least part of that. It is one of the main reasons for it. That climate change, well, we are all in the world, we're contributing to that. So we're all responsible for that drought. Here in Mexico, around 83% of the country is currently under some kind of drought, and 1/3 of the country is either on severe or extreme drought. The contradiction is that here in Chihuahua, which is an arid desert, it's a desert basically. It's the biggest state in Mexico. Only 10% of the water is used by people, and for a couple of decades now, we all are very aware, the population is very aware of the water problem. Every house here has some kind of system to collect water. Basically, we receive water only a few hours per day. So we have tanks on top of our houses, on the roofs, that collect water, 1,000 liters or something for the rest of the time. So we're very aware of that. At the same time, the contradiction comes that 80% of the water use in the state is done by agriculture. We are in Mexico, we're the top producer of more than 10 different crops, including alfalfa, which is 22%, cotton 70%, apples 83%, walnuts 63%. And many of these agricultural production, they are very water intensive products. They should be illegal to be produced here. But there is a lot of corruption, there are illegal wells, there is a lot of money involved. So just like in many other places, and why is it a lot of money involved? Well, a lot of those products are not being sold here in Mexico, but they're being shipped to the US. So that's one reason. As I say, it's a very complex problem. That is one of the problems. 10% of the water is used by the industry. And there we see, for instance, Coca-Cola bottling plants. We have a Heineken brewery as well in this state, where those things shouldn't exist here, basically. At the same time, we have a water treaty with the US since the 40s, where due to having rivers along the border between the US, there is an agreement that basically we give water to each other depending on the state. That treaty, I think, is outdated. It is not taking into account the severe drought that we're facing. Last year here in the state, some of the main, how you say those, where we collect water, basically they were given to the US. There were hundreds of millions of meters of cubic meters given to the US because of this treaty. That is not giving us much left water for the next crops. So just to finish, there are a lot of contradictions. This water is going to Texas, where the need for water there is related to fracking, as just going back to that topic. And yeah, so I know my time is up now, but this problem, as you see, water is really affecting us. And the day zero, basically, when the water is out, in some places of our city and our state, is between 5 and 20 years, where we basically want to get out of water.
Thank you so much, Emilio. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And again, incredibly eye-opening information, I think, for a lot of people in the global north where water does not appear to be an issue. And we can see, I think, from these conversations that nothing could be further from the truth. Thanks, Emilio. So our next speaker is Tempa Gyaltsen Zalha, who is Head of Environment and Development at the Tibetan Policy Institute in India. And Tempa is going to speak about the importance of the Tibetan plateau and the threats to its security and the risks that if climate change and damage to the Tibetan plateau isn't stopped, that the repercussions are absolutely enormous. So we'll hear from Tempa now.
I want to thank the organizers for bringing together such a highly dedicated group of environmentalists for this panel discussion. We in Tibet also facing similar form of water crisis, primarily due to climate change and also partly due to increased resource extraction, increased construction of dams, increased urbanization. As an environmentalist myself, I have attended many UN climate summits as well as other international environment conferences to highlight the global ecological importance of the Tibet Plateau and also highlight the current environmental situation in Tibet. Now, why is it so important to talk about the ecological importance of the Tibet Plateau? It is important because the Tibet Plateau is the roof of the world, the water tower of Asia, and the third pole. Now, why is Tibetan Plateau is called the roof of the world? Tibet Plateau has an area of 2.5 million square kilometer, which means it occupies almost 2% of Earth's land surface, and that makes Tibet the 10th largest country by size. And also, the Tibet Plateau stands at an average elevation of more than 4,000 meters above sea level, which makes the Tibet Plateau the highest and largest plateau on Earth. Now, because of its high elevation and massive surface area, the Tibet Plateau is also home to 46,000 glaciers, which again makes it the third largest concentration of ice after North Pole and South Pole. Now, when the glaciers on the North Pole and South Pole, when they melt into the oceans. But the glaciers present on the Tibet Plateau, when they melt to become rivers across Asia. Now, because of the massive concentration of ice on the plateau, the Tibet Plateau is called the third pole. Now, from this third pole, almost all of major Asian rivers originate and sustain 1.8 billion people directly and 40% of world population indirectly supported by the rivers coming from Tibet. Now, if you travel any part of Asia, you are never far from Tibetan rivers because 10 most densely populated nations on Earth, from Pakistan, India, Thailand, Laos, and Cambodia, and also China, sustained by rivers coming from Tibet. So if anything happens to the Tibetan rivers, any damage or any pollution or any decrease in the flow of the river would affect 40% of world population. Now, from this same plateau, because again it's because of its high elevation, massive surface area, and also the large presence of glaciers, the Tibet Plateau influences climatic conditions across Asia, Europe, and North America. There are scientific papers which has firmly stated that the Tibet Plateau influences the timing and intensity of East Asian monsoon as well as Southeast Asian monsoon. And there are other scientific papers which have linked the recent increase in heat waves across Europe to loss of glaciers on the Tibet Plateau. There are other scientific findings which also have linked that the greater the snowfall on the Tibet Plateau during the winter, warmer it is in Canada. So it is clear that the Tibet Plateau influences climate conditions across Asia, Europe, and North America. So that makes the Tibet Plateau very, very important. And so this important landmass, it needs to be protected. So I would like to urge the United Nations to recognize the global ecological importance of the Tibet Plateau and make Tibet center to any global climate change discussion, because the Tibet Plateau is the solution to combat global climate crisis. This is what we need to do and what the world need to do, because the Tibet Plateau is the roof of the world, the third pole, and the water tower of Asia.
I think so. So I think nobody saw what they spoke. What you guys.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Thank you so much to Tempa for recording that for us earlier, and apologies for it froze there for a few minutes, so apologies for that. Now we are going to go over to our last speaker, Maria Shikongo, who is an amazing activist in Namibia. As I've said before, Ina Maria is an absolute force of nature and a woman to be reckoned with. So she's going to speak to us about the droughts that are currently happening in Namibia, and also why the Okavango Delta is so important and why it needs to be saved from Recon Africa and their plans for oil and gas exploration. So over to you, Ina.
Thank you very much for having me, and I'm very honored to be one of the panelists today. So Namibia is in Southwest Africa, and we have the Namib Desert to the west and the Kalahari Desert to the east. Currently, we have a severe drought in Western Namibia, specifically, especially the Kunene area, which is where our Himba and Demba people live, and they are really being impacted right now. And it's not funny, they are selling their livestock for really nothing, because otherwise they will just die. And we also have people coming in from Angola currently looking for food. So people that have sold everything they have in search of better livelihoods in Namibia, because there is just no food in southern Angola. And central Namibia is being devastated. Well, central north as well is being devastated by locusts, and so is the eastern side, which is now where the Okavango is. So when looking at the demographics of Namibia and it being a water scarce country already, it becomes really important to protect the one source of water that flows throughout the year. And which is why I personally am totally against this development by Recon Africa, a company all the way from Canada. Let me tell you, all the way from Canada, also registered in the US, and they have an office in the UK. These people, they want to do gas and oil exploration out here in the Okavango. They've started with the first well in Kawe, and they're moving on to the second site. The first site, which is not far away from the Matako River, which is basically the river that feeds the Okavango Delta, that is where they put the first well. And the mud drill pit is not lined. So at Bambi, that is where the drill is now moving to next. It is right next to a community borehole. And what is funny about this site is that they put the lining just on top, but not inside the pit. So luckily, someone has provided us with those pictures. And what is amazing, especially when looking at what kind of a country Namibia is, and everyone is talking about all these agreements and all of the blah blah blah. Sorry. And the SDGs, one wonders why even our government would actually allow an activity of this nature to happen. We are facing a drought. We have been facing droughts over the past decade. The rainfall patterns have completely changed. People have now a shorter growing season because they farm with the rain. So now the rain started in December, so you've already lost 2 months, and on top of that, now you've got the locusts that are busy eating up the crops. So in June, when the dry season comes, you will have a serious food shortage. And yet the Okavango has got this potential to become the food basket of the country, if not the region. And it is also the home of our wildlife, obviously. It is the place in Africa that has the biggest population of elephants. We've got the endangered wild dog that is living here. We've got just so much of it, and it's just so beautiful, and it's so sad that people all the way from Canada are they so bored. I wonder, are they so bored that they are now coming here to come and poison our water? And then if you look at how the people live there, they will not survive this. They won't. It is people that live off the land, subsistence farmers. They don't get up in the morning and go work for someone. And so I don't understand what kind of development Recon Africa is talking about, because we should be the one teaching the global north the definition of development. Development is living in harmony with your environment. And this is exactly what we, the global south, have to contribute towards the global north. And this kind of greenwashing is so deadly in this game because it is literally putting a lot more at stake. We are about to lose our water. We are about to lose wildlife. We are being condemned to death by these Canadians. Justin Trudeau, make a plan. I hope you're watching. Much.
Thank you so much, Ina. Thank you so much, and expressed articulately and powerfully as always. For that. Okay, so we have gone through our first round with our speakers, and so now we are going to go to a number of comments which have been sent in. So unfortunately, we won't get to cover all the comments because we have limited time, but thank you so much to everyone who has sent some in. The first one I have here, I'm going to direct towards Esteban. And Peter Hale's comment is that we can't do anything about oil companies. What would you say to this, Esteban?
Can you repeat, so you were cutting off?
Oh, sorry. So somebody sent in a comment saying we cannot do anything about oil companies. What would you say to this comment?
Well, I would say that it's quite the opposite. In the global north, those of us that have the privilege to be here, this is the center of power and the center of the headquarters of all of these multinationals. We have a lot of power if only all of the climate movements would focus their energy on them. We can be like a lens focusing the sunlight. We can burn them if we focus all in one point. Imagine Fridays for Future, Extinction Rebellion, Ende Gelände, and many other grassroots movements coming together against Shell, against Recon Africa, Total, BP. It would be the beginning of the end for them. And that's where we need to focus, because the government are not going to do it. The governments are working for them. These companies are financing their campaigns and their future. The governments will only do as little as possible to keep the population happy. And that's what they're doing with the Paris Agreement and all the other documents that they're signing. It's up to us to stop them ourselves.
Thank you so much, Esteban. So our next comment, I'm going to direct to Olivier. So Lord Planet has written in with a comment about human rights and water. What needs to happen to make sure that this human right to water becomes a reality? What are your thoughts on that, Olivier? You're on mute.
Yeah, I think that you are cutting off. If you could, you can try to.
Sorry,
repeat.
folks. I don't know what's happening with my internet. What needs to happen to make sure that human right to water becomes a reality?
Hello. You are cutting off, so it's not easy to get you. But
Sorry.
yeah,
What? Can you hear me now?
a little bit. Try to go on, please.
Okay. What needs done to make water a human right?
Maybe you can write it on the chat, the question on the chat, because now it becomes a little bit complicated.
Okay.
Mm.
Could someone write it in the chat for Olivier?
Yes, I've now seen the question on the chat.
You see it? Thank you. I'm just going to
Yeah.
turn off my camera, guys.
You were asking if what can be done to make access
Yes,
to water human rights.
Yeah.
As human rights a reality in Democratic Republic of the Congo, especially. Hello?
Yeah, that's the question. What needs to happen to make sure the human right to water becomes a reality?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
As we said from the beginning, I think that access to safe water, especially safe water, is a complex issue, and the causes of water scarcity in the world, especially in developing world, is multidimensional. So to make this a reality, we need to touch or to identify first what are the causes of this scarcity. Because as we said since the beginning, in my country, water shortage is not a matter of water resources. Water resources are there, but there is a problem of water management and water initiatives. It is not a priority for the government as well as other stakeholders from worldwide. So I think that to make this a reality in Democratic Republic of the Congo, it should be prioritized first in public policies, and also all the stakeholders in all over the world need to help us as activists to make a pressure upon the government so that it may try at least to do even the 1 out of 10 of its duty, because this is a huge question that cannot be solved by one person. It needs a synergy of actions so that they feel obliged that they have to do it. It is not a favor, so we need to put pressure upon them.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Olivier. Thank you so much. Our next question is for Emilio. Can you hear me okay, Emilio? So somebody has commented, it is hard to imagine why such a dry country like Mexico would sell their water to the US. Could you explain the reasoning behind why they do that?
I'm sorry, that went a bit fast. Could you repeat?
Sorry. Okay. So somebody asked, why would such a dry country as Mexico sell water to the US? That's the question.
Right. So we're not selling the water to the US. We're just giving it. There is a treaty between the two countries because we share a river as a border. It is hard to imagine why we do that, especially in the north states of Mexico, where it's so dry. Especially in these times, which are that we're having a drought. Why are they doing it? At this moment, they are doing it because basically this is my personal take on the subject. But the Texas state is having a lot of water usage at the moment because they're doing a lot of fracking. And fracking right now is very important to the US, not just because it's a product that they're helping them, but it goes beyond that. So I think one of the pressures in Mexico for this water, if not directly, at least indirectly, it's related to fracking.
Thank you, Emilio. Thank you for that. The next comment is for Ina. And the question is, I am wondering if you see greenwashing from any of the institutions you are fighting.
Yes,
and that comment is, yeah. Thanks, Ina.
Yes, of course. I mean, our government had a presentation this evening, and they were just pushing economic benefits, and they were so proudly boasting about 50 people being employed when Kawe has got a population of 4,000 people. And they also did not mention is that people are being hired for 12 days and then they're being fired. And she's there proudly boasting about it. And she is not even mentioning the fact that Recon Africa stole the land from the people. They did not get permission. They don't have water permits. They took the land from the people. Like Andreas is sitting there now on a much smaller farm. He's got three people with disabilities. How is this supposed to feed him if Recon Africa took over his entire field? And the government is busy protecting these people and telling the government, or the population, that we are just, making noise for nothing, that people are paying us. Please, if anyone has got enough money to spare, I would like to sue them for that. They are claiming that I'm being paid, claiming that external forces are busy influencing us, when we can see what happens in the Niger Delta, when we can see what happens in Ecuador. What kind of greenwashing is this? And yes, it is fueled by corruption. And unfortunately, our country has been corrupted. And you can see with the fish rot scandal, it is very much rife. So they cannot even deny that. So that is the most difficult thing, because the population, they listen to what the governments tell them. So when you come out of nowhere, activists, and you are there fighting a big company, it becomes more difficult, because there is a lot of money at stake that was invested already in this company, but it's all based on corruption if one really looks into it. And they are asking people to submit questions. But even if you look at the website, it is not a safe website. It's HTTPS or something like that, but without the S, meaning that it could be a pirated website, but they're asking people to submit their comments onto such a website. Why? This is like totally illegal. So no, it is not a nice game. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ina. Thank you so much for explaining that. Okay, so we are going to go to our last question now. Thanks to all the speakers for answering those comments, and apologies that we didn't get to all of them. So the final question is, in this year of COP26, for water and climate around the world, what action can people take to support the struggles of the Global South? And I'm going to direct that question firstly to Ina, if that's okay, Ina. So do you need to hear the question again, Ina?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. In this year of COP26, for water and climate around the world, what action can people take to support the struggles of the Global South?
People must definitely start asking the governments to stop funding these fossil fuels. Banks, pension funds, your money is being used to destroy our homes. Please put pressure on them so they stop it. They need to divest. It is not a question of, yes, we want to continue this fight. No, we want to bring up our children in peace. We also want them to have a real future. And it is not fair that we are now made to be on the front line to fight these companies, when we should not be even having this discussion when looking at all of those agreements that the people have been signing over the years. It is totally unacceptable. So please ask your governments to stop funding, and they need to divest now, because for some of us it might be too late, especially when you look at what's happening in Mozambique. So there is a civil war that is currently happening, and the fossil fuels could be 100% behind it, and it is a devastation. It is a genocide that is happening, a genocide of our people, our African continent. And this kind of exploitation has to stop. 500 years plus, and we are still doing the same things that were done by the colonialists. Still the same thing. We need to divest because our lives are at stake. That is what needs to happen.
Thank you, Ina. Thank you so much for that. And now to answer the same question, we will go back to Mitzi in the Philippines.
This year is a very crucial year for the climate crisis, especially with COP26 coming up. We need so much pressure on world leaders right now in order to really put climate on the agenda, and not just climate, but also water, but they're tied together, essentially. We have to put people and planet over profit without exception, without questions, unconditionally. And this will only happen if people from the global north unite with the people from the global south and you join our fight. We don't need you to give us a voice because we're not voiceless. We don't need you to fight for us, but we need you to fight with us. Fight harder, fight stronger, fight for our planet, fight for this future that we all deserve. We need corporations to act on the climate crisis immediately. What does that mean? We need less subsidies for the fossil fuel industry. We need to allocate our funds economically for the people and for renewable energy and for proper allocation of water resources. We need to have policies that actively engage people who are most impacted by the climate crisis and by the water crisis. We need policies that protect people's democracy, especially our indigenous peoples, our farmers, and our fishing communities. This is all so important because this is what we need to achieve climate justice. This is what we need to achieve a better world.
And thank you so much to Mitzi again for speaking with us and for sharing her passion and her advice on how we move forward. So next we'll go to Olivier for the same question.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would say that this year we are facing a pandemic of COVID-19, and this is a huge opportunity at the same time. When we are seeing it as being a problem for the world, let's take it as being the opportunity to rethink our actions towards the nature. We have understood, we have seen how tremendous are the consequences when we are in trouble with our environment. We have seen how when ecosystems are disturbed, we can get in trouble. Let us prepare. Let us fight what we are about to face. We are already facing the climate crisis. And if this is not reduced, if we do not take actions now, there will be a big problem. We'll have a crisis even harder than by this pandemic, the one we are facing. So to help the global south, we need to prioritize research before every action that can be done in the environment. Whenever we have to take an action to implement in a company, in an ecosystem, it does try to conduct a research to try to promote systems thinking around it, because they are always complex questions. So we need interdisciplinarity and transdisciplinarity in whatever action we can conduct in the global south, so that we may understand very well all the consequences that can come from what we are trying to start as a project. That's what needs to be done. So let us focus on understanding the consequences of every action that we take in the global south, not just looking at money. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Olivier. Thank you. And now over to Emilio for the same question. Emilio, thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Well, as we've been saying, the water crisis is a climate crisis, and we can go beyond that. The climate crisis is a human crisis. Every time that we hear about a natural disaster, at this point, the reality is that those are not natural. Those disasters are happening because of our actions, because we want to consume more, we want to become more wealthy, more for many of those reasons. As this crisis comes here, I think as people, something that we should realize, and kind of put in my XR hat a little bit, Many of the things that we have tried in the past have not worked. The only thing that is left to do is doing civil disobedience, not violent civil disobedience. We need to go to the streets. We need to tell the government and the companies that enough is enough. We cannot be living in this economic system that is killing us all. It's suicidal what we're doing as a humanity. COP26, it is not just the most important event of the year. I would probably say that it's probably the most important event of human history. If we don't change now our path, every year is going to become harder and harder, not just because of the crisis problems that are becoming more and more difficult, just because as countries will we have less capacity to act because of the same problems. So it is urgent, and I'm not exaggerating. We need to do it now. Thank you, Sue.
Thank you so much, Emilio. Yeah, I think urgent doesn't even cover it anymore, does it? Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to go back to Tempa now in Tibet for his thoughts on this question.
Now, what action the global community or the international leaders attending the UN Climate Summit in Glasgow can do is that we all must work together. His Holiness the Dalai Lama has repeatedly urged world leaders to set national politics aside and work for a more sustainable future for all. And His Holiness has rightly said that environment and climate are non-political issues that we must work together. So I urge the world leaders, diplomats, government leaders, and also civil society groups from across the globe gathering at the Glasgow to work for a more sustainable future, and that we should recognize that the climate change and environment are non-political issues. It's not an issue about the rich, one issue against the other, rich against the poor, or the developed against the developing, or north against the south. It is issue that will have serious implications for all of us. So we must come together. We must help each other. The best we can do is to protect the head source of many of the rivers that flow across the globe. And Tibet Plateau is the head source of 10 most important rivers in Asia, and we must protect this river source. If we are able to protect the river source, then we are able to protect the continuous flow of these rivers, so that they can support livelihood across Asia and the world. So this is what I feel must and should be done at the upcoming UN Climate Summit. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tempa, for speaking with us earlier and for sharing all his thoughts on questions as well. Another amazing activist. And now, last but not least, on this round, we're going to put that question to Esteban. Esteban, you want to?
Yes. So first, the COP26, I think the most important thing that needs to happen is to put the real issues of the world, the real issues of the global south on the agenda, and mention all the things they're not mentioning. They need to not only talk the talk, but walk the walk. And Europe needs to put its money where its mouth is. Basically, right now, with this hypocrisy, Europe is merely outsourcing its emissions to the rest of the world, and especially to the global south. So that's one thing that needs to happen, to put the real issues on the agenda. As Emilio just mentioned, that the water crisis is the climate crisis for all the people in the front lines in the global south. These struggles are not only against fracking, but mining, agriculture, intensive agriculture, bottling it up, privatization of the water, all done mostly at hands of the European or global north multinationals. But it's not all bad news. We have been coming together. We have been building a coalition, multiple coalitions between the global south and the global north. Last year, we came together in a coalition that we named Shale Must Fall. It's a play on words that is inspired by Shell Must Fall, to really bring the heat to the multinational companies that are the biggest oil and gas companies of the world, that are fracking much of the global south, while importing this to Europe, and where it's actually banned, doing abroad what they cannot do at home. And with them, we did an action connecting the supply chains, the extraction sites in the rest of the world, with the consuming end in Europe, and blocking their headquarters or their offices whenever possible with actions of civil disobedience. There's a lot of potential there. If we can become more and more massive in numbers, we can really bring this to the table. And last Monday, we did a global action with many other groups for World Water Day. But it did not end on Monday. We didn't save water. We need to continue fighting so that water is part of the agenda in the global north, not only in the COP, but also in the climate movement. It's pretty much not present. And we really need to have a cultural shift of mind to understand that the water crisis is the climate crisis. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Esteban. And that finishes our event for this evening. Thank you so much to all our speakers who have been amazing. Thank you to everyone who's doing work behind the scenes on the tech and comments, etc. Thank you so much to everybody who has listened in. And please do share the recording around when the recording is available, and spread the word. It's just such a vital conversation to have. Also, if any of you have been moved to action or feel like getting further involved, the information for Shale Must Fall or XOR COP are available on the event or in comments, and we will always be recruiting. So we will be very, very happy to have you. And I think after listening to all our speakers here tonight, it's never been more clear that we have to come together in global solidarity. And us in the global north really need to put our services to those in the global south. They know this fight. They know how to win it. So, they need to lead the way, and we need to follow. So thank you all so much for being here. We're going to leave you with a short video from some of the solidarity actions that we had with Shale Must Fall and XOR. So thank you all so much for being here. And apologies for the internet difficulties at one stage. Take care, everybody, and thank you so much. Solidarity.
We are coming together, connecting the global south and the global north. This is what it looks like to fight for 1.5.
Wir Mapuche sagen, dass wir nicht damit einverstanden sind, dass multinationale Unternehmer unsere Ressourcen plündern, wie es seit mehr als 500 Jahren geschieht. Was die multinationalen Unternehmen tun, ist die aktuelle Form des Kolonialismus. Andere nennen es Neokolonialismus. Diese Unternehmer werden die Reichtümer unserer Territorien ausbeuten, die Gewinne mitnehmen und die Umweltverschmutzung zurücklassen.
Fight for climate justice.
Wintershall must fall. Shell must fall. BP must fall. Total must fall. They all must fall, because we will have no future if they keep going.
Stop fracking! Nicht in Vaca Muerta und auch nicht so.